most important. It's the most important out of the three because it's the end of the chain. It's the one which most immediately affects man and the world in which we live today. Of the three, evolutionism also most obviously and most frequently contradicts the Bible. Of the three, it is the one which most clearly expels God from his universe. Of the three, it's evolutionism which most affects other fields and issues, as we shall see, in a very clearly anti-Christian direction. But before I come to that, I need to stress one more point. A simple principle. Origins determine nature. Origins determine nature. That is, what something is, its nature, is determined by where it comes from. Origins determine nature. What is the universe? Well, it's something which is made of pre-existent, eternal matter. It's the product of an explosion of matter and energy, the product of time and chance. This planet is the product of time and chance. It is 4.54 billion years old, according to latest estimates. It is cooling. It is the product of entirely natural processes. All living creatures are the product of time and chance. You are a developed ape. You are evolved slime. Origins determine nature. Where you came from makes you what you are, makes the world what it is, and makes the universe what it is. So what are the ramifications then of Darwin's dangerous idea? What other fields and what other areas does it affect? First of all, as we've said, biology, and therefore botany, the life of plants, and zoology, the life of animals. Then, as we've already said, it goes hand in hand with geology, a theory of geology, uniformitarianism, which impinges upon paleontology, the study of fossils, and archaeology. Then, as we've said, it goes hand in hand with an astronomical theory, that of the Big Bang, the explosion from the pinhead that created the entire universe. Evolution affects all these things with these two complementary theories, so that Christians in these areas are up against it. Let's go a little bit further. Evolutionism affects history. If you read a history book which claims to be a history of the world in its entirety, or the history of a country of the world going way back as far as you can, or the history of a theme which purports to treat that theme from the very beginning, if you do that, and you're not just looking at an idea or nation for a specific period, if you look at that history, then the first chapter or so of that history book will be evolutionary history. The first chapter of that book will be filled with guesswork. At this stage, human beings may have crawled out of their caves. We think that this is likely. This may have happened. I find such chapters in history books incredibly boring and repetitive, as well as false, and they should begin once upon a time, because it's all speculation and foolishness, fables. Evolutionism and history. Evolutionism and linguistics, and especially the origin of language and families of languages. It is not the Tower of Babel as described in Genesis 11. The origin of language from an evolutionary point of view is and has to be animal grunts. What about psychology? Think according to evolutionary principles. Man is an evolved animal. So if you want to know how man thinks, although some evolutionists doubt that man thinks, then experiments with monkeys and other animals, including insects, can be very fruitful. The only problem is that man is not an animal. What about Sigmund Freud? Probably the most famous psychologist today, possibly the only psychologist some of us have ever heard of. Freud was an ardent follower of Darwin. He opened his psychoanalysis clinic on Easter Sunday, 1886, as a deliberate affront to the resurrected Christ. Freud, according to common wisdom, managed to drive God out of the mind and out of even man's unconsciousness. So that's the end of Christianity in that area too. Psychology, as even a brief study of the word will indicate, means the study of the soul. For evolutionism, there is no soul. There is no afterlife. You're just the product of matter and energy. And if you protest that you have a conscience, that too is claimed as the product of evolution. You only feel guilty, which is a bad feeling, because you do something that may harm you or your group. That's it. There is no forgiveness of sin, because there is no sin, and there is no God to forgive sin, and there is no cross in which we find redemption. And the work of Christian ministers in the care of souls is at best of some sort of therapeutic value for people who like that sort of things, and is at worst positively destructive and deluding. So much for pastors preaching the word and bringing the scriptures to the members of the church. And what about the world of ethics? There is no God. There is no right or wrong in absolute terms. There are no transcendental standards because origin determines nature, because we are just evolved beasts. Right and wrong is what the dominant people in society think. And then we have issues like abortion, which necessarily spring up wherever evolutionism is embraced. They can spring up even without evolutionism being embraced, but once you've got evolution, abortion necessarily follows and increases because we're animals, because of the survival of the fittest. And if you've got a fight between the mother and the unborn child, guess which is the fittest? The mother has made, as our society puts it, a choice. Then we have euthanasia, that is so-called mercy killing. The unfit must die because they are a drain on resources. What do you do when your old beloved dog gets too old